Once again, thank you for Shalom. Most of the time after they have sung, I have a loss of words. It's as a sermon at itself, and then you don't need to preach. You actually just need to be quiet. Isn't that so? Thank you so much. Let's just bow our heads. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my salvation. Amen. I wish you a yes, yes, yes Easter. Would you turn maybe to your neighbor? And you do know what is a high five, don't you? I would like you to turn to your neighbor, both sides, and give them a high five and say to them, I wish you a yes, yes, yes Easter. Shall we do that? Give them a nice high five. Yeah. A yes, yes, yes Easter. Thank you. You're catching on in the spirit of Easter, don't you? Every year, on the Thursday before Easter, we get together, and not in the upper room though, mind you, but in the catacomb in Wesley Hall, for a commemoration of the Seder meal, the Seder supper. And we did it this year as well. At the Seder supper, we followed the Haggadah. That is the order of the Seder, and everyone participates in that to make it a very memorable and spiritual, uplifting event. Here on Easter Sunday, I would like to just repeat a few of the things that we do during the Seder supper, and I would like to focus in on one aspect of the Seder supper, or the Seder meal. The Seder is the Passover meal celebrated and commemorated for more than 3,000 years in the Jewish community. God commanded Moses 3,000 years ago when Israel fled from Egypt to commemorate this every year. We know what happened there. It was the last plague, and they had to flee. And in haste, they prepared this meal. And in every Jewish home since then, Passover is probably the most important Jewish festival on the calendar. Now, in Christian tradition, we don't really do it the Jewish way, but I think it's a very good thing to do it in the traditional way, because there are such a lot of wonderful things that we can learn from that. And that's why we have started that in our in English ministry quite a few years ago, and do it every Thursday before Easter Sunday. Just to give you a bit of a background on the Passover meal or the Seder supper. In the Jewish community, it is usually preceded by a week of house cleaning. Now this is very interesting. In every Jewish home, they have to clean the house from all leaven. This is the commandment that there should not be found any leaven in the house whatsoever. Now this is interesting. This is where our spring cleaning comes from, I think. So a week before the Passover meal, it is the task of the women of the house. The men, they sit out on that one, yeah? But the women, they have to clean the house. And they clean it from top to bottom. Every hook and nook, every part of the house, they clean it. And then it was the task of the father of the house to do inspection. Good way of getting out of the cleaning part. So what he does then, he goes through the house and there's a whole ceremony. Now there's one twist. The mother of the house or the woman of the house, she should then hide a little bit of leaven somewhere. And it's his task to find it. And what he does is he takes a feather and a spoon and a napkin. And then he has to go through the whole house and he has to find the leaven that was hidden. Now, if he was good to his wife throughout the year, she would hide it in the same place every year. If he wasn't good to her, boy, he's got a job to find it. I mean, he has to search the whole house. And the Passover meal cannot begin unless he finds it. Once he found it, so the feather is there to scrape it off into the spoon, and then from the spoon to the napkin. He is not supposed to touch it, because then the whole story starts from the beginning. Then he takes that napkin and he folds it and he takes it to the synagogue. And in the yard of the synagogue, there's a huge bonfire, and there he burns it. And then alone can he declare it as the Passover meal can begin. The house is clean. And then the Passover meal, when it starts, there's a whole beautiful ritual. Everything has meaning. And we must remember something. In the Old Testament, when we read the Old Testament, one of my professors he always said that the Old Testament is God's picture book. The New Testament explains the pictures. In the Old Testament, they did not have a wonderful Bible like us, well-binded and so on. They had all these rituals and all these symbols, and that was the Bible. That was how they read the Bible and God's laws. So when they reenact these rituals, everything has meaning. Once back at the house, the whole ceremony starts, and the father dresses up. During our ceremony on Thursday, it was my task to dress up. What he does is he puts on a kittel. Kittel is very much like our robes, but a kittel is a priestly symbol. The priest wore kittels. So he takes on his role as the priest of the house. The word priest means a bridge builder. The builder of bridges between his house and God. What a role. And then he puts on a mitre. That's that hat thing. A mitre is a crown. Also the high priest put that on. His symbol of I am the priest of the house. God has placed me, and that is a wonderful opportunity for him and a privilege for him. If we look at the table, I quickly want to go over the table and just give you an idea of what's on the table. There are 4 glasses, 4 cups, and they all have wine in it. Now, the number 4 has a wonderful meaning, especially here at Passover and Passover meal. In the Passover meal, the 4 glasses are filled to capacity. The reason for that is that wine has a wonderful symbolic meaning for the Jews. Wine means life. Wine means joy. And then we get the psalmist in Psalm 23 who says, "My cup runneth over." Joy It's a royal drink. It symbolizes freedom. It symbolizes celebration. And there are 4 cups. The first cup is the cup of sanctification, and they start with that. They sanctify the whole meal. The second cup is the cup of plagues. And what they do with this cup when they talk about the cup, because they will talk about everything that's on the table. When they talk about the cup of plagues, remember the cup is filled right to the brim. And then they will call out the plagues, and then they will dip their finger in the cup, and they will put it on the plate with 10 drops for each one of the plagues. They take joy out, and they mix that with the sorrow. And then there's a third cup. But between the second and the third cup, there's a meal. The third cup is the cup of redemption and the cup of blessing. Redemption looking back, blessing looking forward. We'll look at that a little bit later. And then the fourth cup is the cup of praise. But then there's one cup that stands separate. And that cup, they don't touch that cup. It's the cup of Elijah. Very interesting cup. It's not supposed to be filled with anything. They wait for Elijah. There's also a chair for Elijah to come. On the table, and those are the cups. The food on the table, or the Seder plate, is also interesting. It's filled, the green that you see there is parsley or karpas. And they would dip that in salt water. There's also a bowl with salt water, and they dip it and they eat it. The karpas stands for life, and the salt water for tears. Life and tears go together. And then there's also charoset. Charoset is the colored mix that you see there. It's apple and honey. It's a mix of that. There's a shank bone that you can see on the table. The shank bone is for the lamb that was slaughtered. And then there's also other things on the table, like the egg and the bitter herb. Everything has meaning. And what is the order? How do they do the whole Seder meal? There's a very interesting order that they follow. First, the woman of the house, the mother of the house, comes and she lit the candles. The candles stand for the light of the world. And then after that, they eat the parsley. After they ate the parsley, there's a child who asks 4 questions. And those 4 questions, they will start to answer. The 4 questions, I just want to mention that to you. Why is this night different from other nights? All other nights they eat chometz or matzo. This night only matzo. Second question, on all other nights we eat all kinds of vegetable. This night, maror. All other nights we dip only once. This night we dip it twice. Another interesting question, on all other nights we may eat sitting or reclining. This night we eat reclining. And so he starts to answer these questions. Very central to the whole Seder is the matzo. Now, I've got a very small matzo here, and this is the unleavened bread. Usually it's much bigger. But the matzo, he would lift that up, and they would start a meal with that when they eat the charoset. But I would like to concentrate on a very interesting part of this meal. The meal is divided into 2 parts, or the ceremony is divided into 2 parts. The first part before the real meal, before they eat lots of wonderful foods. So they have the ceremony, and then there's a big meal. And then after the big meal, there's the second part of the ceremony. So the first part of the ceremony is the answering of the questions. And then they eat the wonderful big part of the meal, and then the second part would start. So let me quickly go about the first part. That's where the women of the house or the mother of the house lit the candles, the child asks the questions, and they start answering the questions. The questions are very interesting to be answered. For instance, the one question, just to whet your appetite, the one question is all about the cushion. Why is there a little cushion on each chair? The reason there is, he asked the question, why do we sit reclining? The answer for that is slaves stand eating. Free people sit. And they celebrate their freeness, their liberty. We are free people. We are not slaves anymore. But then there's another thing. There is a little white sack like this, and they call this the matzatash. The matzatash. It has 3 little pouches in. And in the 3 pouches, there are 3 matzos. There's a one right on top, one under, and one in the middle. And at a certain point in this ceremony, the father takes out the middle one. The one in the middle, he puts the other 2 away, and the one in the middle, and he breaks it. And he takes this broken part, and he puts it in another napkin, like this. And then what happens is, he takes this napkin with the broken part, the broken matzo, and he takes it outside and he hides it somewhere. And then they go on with the ceremony, and then the meal. Wonderful meal. There's everything your heart can imagine. They eat, and they eat, and they eat, and it's wonderful. And then at the end of the meal, the children start to get a bit jittery. They have to get out because they have to look for this thing. And this is called the afikomen. The afikomen. Now this is very interesting. The question is, why does the matzatash, why does it have 3 layers in, and why does it take out the middle one and breaks it? Well, they have all kinds of wonderful explanations, but as a Christian, I see something about the triune God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And there's something more interesting about that, because he takes out the middle one and he breaks it. Let's quickly look at the matzo. If you would look at the matzo, the bigger one, actually I could only find this one here. The matzo has stripes, and then it has piercings. Now on Wednesday I tried to bake my own matzo. And it was quite a thing. It was a bit too hard for somebody to eat, so you could kill something with that. But it looked quite fine. If you look at the matzah and you see the stripes, in Isaiah 53 it says, "But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed." Look at the piercing. It's pierced. Zechariah 12, verse 10 says, "And I will pour out on the house of David and inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced." The afikomen is broken, wrapped in a linen cloth. And then, after the meal is finished, the leader of the Seder lets the children loose to hunt for this. And don't worry, they hunt. Everyone is hunting. And then there's this lucky one who finds it. And if the child finds it, he runs back and he says, "Yes, yes, yes, I found it." And he gets a prize. You see, this is so important. Without the afikomen, the meal cannot be concluded. They cannot carry on with the meal. In the upper room, when Jesus had his Last Supper with his disciples, this is the Seder meal that they had. And also at some point, I wonder who it was that was sent out or who found the afikomen, because they had the tradition. And it was this piece that he took out. And he took the bread, gave thanks, and he broke it. And he gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Brothers and sisters, there's something so incredibly profound about this. If this is significant to us as Christians, that it means Jesus Christ was broken on the cross. His body was broken. And that broken body was hidden, it was buried. And then after a while that we believe, and that what we celebrate this day, on Easter Day, is that it was brought back from the dead. Then Jesus Christ was celebrating his risen body and not a corpse. It is so, so uplifting. He distributed. He broke his living body. It's given for you. Eat. 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 It's after it is found. The middle matzah. It's broken. It's yours. A few things first. Remember, the matzah was taken out, broken up, buried outside. That's a tradition. You see, Jesus came into this world. His body was broken. He was taken out, buried outside the city. After the meal, the afikomen is found by a child, brought back. The risen Christ. The risen Christ. It was simple people who went to the grave and they found the grave empty. It was the woman, right on Peter. They found it empty. And then Jesus took this. He said, "This is my body. My body." Yes, we commemorate his death and we celebrate his resurrection. My body, which is broken for you. We celebrate life. Broken to be shared. We do not celebrate a corpse, but we celebrate life. We celebrate life in the present tense and in the continuous tense. And then after this, he took the cup of redemption. He said, this is the New Testament, the new covenant in my blood. Isn't that great? The new covenant in my blood. You see, brothers and sisters, every time we take the bread, Jesus shares with us not only his death, but his life, with a command: go, live. We don't celebrate death, we commemorate it. Yes, we acknowledge it. Jesus died, but my goodness, he is alive. You see, many people celebrate death and commemorate life. Can I say it again? Many people celebrate death in their lives. They live as if they have died, and they commemorate life. Life is something different. When we will celebrate here this afternoon, when we take the bread, it's an invitation to commemorate death and start celebrating life, because it is the life of the living Christ. It prompts us to go out and say yes to life. We are yes people. We are people of hope. This is so powerful if we just take this. It's so powerful that we can go out and know I am fed with life. I can go out and I can be a life bearer. My words must be bearers of hope and life. My actions, everything of me is filled with the life of Christ, and I give this life out. Life must be a life of the risen Christ. Oh, my brothers and sisters, can I read to you a little piece that was written by Henry Nouwen? Let the news that Christ is risen calm your fears. Death has no power over you, so laugh. Laugh to your heart's content. Let God hear you laugh. Yes, yes, yes. Be not afraid. Yes. Peace be with you. Yes. Life is eternal. Yes. In the reign of God, there's enough joy, love, happiness, kindness, riches. Christ is risen. There's no death. There's only life. Be not afraid. Yes. Yes, yes, amen.
Please rise for the singing of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Please have your seats.